Before these guys were running the country, they were surveyors, failed farmers, B-movie actors, and one dude who fell off a boat 14 times. Let's speedrun what US presidents were doing before they got the keys to the White House. George Washington started as a surveyor in Virginia, basically measuring land for rich people while working under his relative Lord Fairfax. He took over the Mount Vernon estate, joined the British colonial army, sat in the Virginia House of Burgesses and the Continental Congress, then led the entire Continental Army in the Revolution. After the war, he tried to retire, and America said, "That's cute, but buddy, we need you to fix this Constitution situation," and dragged him right back into the spotlight like a boomer they refused to let stay retired. John Adams wanted a quiet life on a New England farm, but his dad was like, "Nope, dream bigger." He skipped the clergyman path, taught school while studying the law, became a big-time Boston lawyer, helped in the Continental Congress, and then 8 years as Washington's vice president, aka the guy standing awkwardly next to the legend. Imagine being the warm-up act for George Washington for nearly a decade. Thomas Jefferson was a highly educated plantation owner with a law degree, which he used to become a respected lawyer, a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, and governor of Virginia during the Revolution. After independence, he served as U.S. Minister to France, then Washington's Secretary of State, then Adams' very salty vice president, where he spent most of his time disagreeing with Adams on everything. It was less administration and more very long group project argument. James Madison was another Virginia landowner, but with main character political nerd energy. He bounced through safety committees, the Virginia Convention, the Governor's Council, the Continental Congress, and the Virginia House of Delegates, even doing diplomatic work in Paris. He served in the House of Representatives and as Jefferson's Secretary of State before his own turn in the big chair, the kid who did all the group project work and still volunteered for extra credit. John Quincy Adams grew up in the political spotlight as the son of President John Adams, our first major presidential Nepo baby. He earned a law degree, flopped as a Boston lawyer, then pivoted into diplomacy as a U.S. envoy in Europe under Washington. After that, he served as Senator and Secretary of State under Madison, collecting government titles like Pokemon badges. Gotta catch 'em all, but make it bureaucratic. Andrew Jackson had a feral childhood. He fought in the Revolution as a kid, got captured by the British, and came out of it with scars and rage. He studied law, became a public prosecutor, ran sketchy business ventures, and then became Tennessee's first congressman and senator, a judge, militia leader, war hero in 1812, and the Creek and Seminole Wars, and governor of Florida Territory. Jackson lived life like an action movie character with no stunt doubles and no HR department to stop him. Martin Van Buren didn't go to college, but his well-connected dad landed him a job as a legal clerk. Light Nepo baby vibes. He became a lawyer, built a successful practice, and climbed from county official to state senator, New York Attorney General, U.S. Senator, Governor, Secretary of State under Jackson, and finally Vice President. He basically perfected the how to become president in the 1800s skill tree. William Henry Harrison dropped out of medical school like, "I'd rather shoot things," and joined the Army. He fought Native Americans, governed Indiana Territory, fought in the War of 1812, then served in the House and Senate before fumbling an ambassadorship to Columbia so badly, Jackson called him home. Back on a failing Ohio farm, he worked as a county recorder to pay the bills and somehow still became president. The "How did he get here?" speedrun, with the shortest presidency to match. John Tailor was another slave-owning Virginia plantation guy turned lawyer who served in the House of Delegates, fought briefly in the War of 1812, and became U.S. Representative, Governor, and Senator. He signed on as Harrison's vice president. And then Harrison died 30 days into office, and Tailor took the presidential chair like someone who found it on Craigslist. Lightly used, previous owner deceased, no returns. James K. Polk grinds through Tennessee politics like he's trying to prestige in Call of Duty. Lawyer, House of Representatives, Speaker of the House, Governor, President. He treated the presidency like a limited-time event, hit all his objectives, and then peaced out. Zachary Tailor, unlike many polished Virginia landowners, wasn't well-educated. He just dove straight into the Army as a teen. He fought in the War of 1812, the Second Seminole War, and the Mexican-American War, becoming a beloved general. America saw the win streak and elected him president like he's a sports team carrying the season.
We like what he did over there. Let's see what happens if we give him the whole country.
Millard Fillmore grew up on his family's farm, apprenticed for a trade, went back to school, clerked for a judge, taught and became a lawyer. He entered politics as a state assemblyman, then U.S. representative, led the Whigs on the Ways and Means Committee, and became New York State Comptroller. In 1848, he became vice president under Tailor, and when Tailor died, Fillmore fell straight into the presidency, promoted because the universe hit the random event button. Franklin Pierce started as a New Hampshire lawyer, then leveled up through the state legislature, Speaker, U.S. House, and Senate. He fought in the Mexican-American War as a colonel turned brigadier general and chaired the Constitutional Convention in 1850. He basically did a tour of every branch of government before the White House, like he was playing political bingo. James Buchanan, the last president born in the 18th century, followed the classic early American path. Lawyer, brief War of 1812 service without combat, then Pennsylvania legislature, and 10 years in the U.S. House. Jackson sent him to Russia as envoy. He came back as senator, served as Secretary of State under Polk, then minister to Britain under Pierce. After one failed nomination attempt, he finally won in 1856, just in time for the country to start imploding. Incredible timing, terrible moment. Abraham Lincoln, before becoming the most iconic president and the first to be assassinated, did basically every frontier job. Farmhand, carpenter, flatboat worker, store clerk, laborer, volunteer in the Black Hawk War, postmaster, surveyor, full side quest build. After getting his law license, he served in the Illinois legislature, did a term in the U.S. House, went back to law and state politics, and then won the 1860 elections. From log cabin to top hat main character is one heck of a character arc. Andrew Johnson started as a tailor's apprentice and opened his own shop at 17. He bought real estate, became an alderman, mayor, state legislature, state senator, U.S. representative for a decade, then governor of Tennessee twice, and U.S. senator. Lincoln made him military governor of Tennessee, then picked him as second-term VP, putting him first in line when tragedy struck. Johnson basically got yeeted into the presidency by fate. Ulysses S. Grant went from West Point to distinguished service in the Mexican-American War, then retired and failed miserably as a farmer, ending up in his brother's leather shop. The Civil War dragged him back in. He stacked wins until he became the General-in-Chief and the General of the Army. War hero status unlocked the path straight to the presidency. The classic, you won the war here, run the country package deal. Rutherford B. Hayes made his name as a criminal defense lawyer and defender of the people, opened the Cincinnati law office, and dipped into local politics. He won a city council seat to finish a dead man's term, then joined the Union Army, becoming a brigadier general. While still serving, he got elected to the U.S. House, then left Congress to become governor of Ohio for 3 consecutive terms. People just kept voting for him like he was free dessert. James Garfield absolutely refused to stay in one lane. He was a canal boat sailor, fell off 14 times. Carpenter, teacher, janitor, preacher, college president, lawyer, state senator, union general, and finally U.S. representative. The man was a walking resume generator until he landed the presidency. LinkedIn would have crashed trying to load him. Chester A. Arthur worked as a teacher, then lawyer, joined a big New York firm defending enslaved and free black clients, became a militia officer and quartermaster general in the Civil War, and retired as a brigadier general. He dove into machine politics, became collector of the Port of New York, enjoyed so many kickbacks that President Hayes fired him, then somehow became Garfield's VP and took over after the assassination. Fired for corruption to president is a wild career arc. Grover Cleveland stepped up after his father died, worked to support his family, clerked at a law firm, studied part-time, passed the bar, and became assistant district attorney, then sheriff. After a stint in private law, he became mayor of Buffalo, governor of New York, then president. Twice, but not in a row because he was spicy like that. He really said, "I'll be president, take a break, and then come back for the sequel." Benjamin Harrison, grandson of President William Henry Harrison, grew up on a farm and became a lawyer in 1854. He served as city attorney, Republican committee member, state Supreme Court reporter, Civil War brigadier general, and then U.S. senator. Nepo baby with actual talent. Prestige mode Nepo. William McKinley jumped into the military at 18, fought in the Civil War, retired as a major, and became a lawyer. He worked as a county prosecutor, spent 14 years in Congress under Ways and Means Committee, then became governor of Ohio before reaching the presidency. Classic 1800s grind set: war, law, Congress, governor, president, repeat. Theodore Roosevelt lived the I-do-everything lifestyle. State assemblyman, rancher, outlaw chaser, historian, author, civil service commissioner, New York Police Board member, and assistant secretary of the Navy, before going bam, Rough Rider commander in the Spanish-American War. War hero, governor of New York, vice president, and suddenly president after McKinley's assassination. The man was human caffeine, pure chaotic energy in a suit. William Howard Taft started as a courthouse reporter, became a lawyer, then assistant prosecutor, judge, solicitor general, and federal appeals judge. He taught law, became dean, governed the Philippines, and served as Roosevelt's Secretary of War. He wanted the Supreme Court more than anything, so America made him president first just to mess with him. He's the only guy who can put President of the United States and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court on the same resume. Woodrow Wilson struggled in school before turning into an academic overachiever, law degree, PhD, professor at multiple universities, 10 books, and president of Princeton. Only then did he become governor of New Jersey and win the presidency twice because voters apparently loved homework. He ran the country like a very intense syllabus. Warren G. Harding taught school, tried law and journalism, then hit the jackpot as a successful newspaper owner. He climbed from state senator to lieutenant governor to U.S. senator to president. His administration later exploded in scandal, but the resume leading up to it was solid. Great trailer, rough movie. Calvin Coolidge worked at his father's store, became a lawyer, and hopped up the ladder. Councilman, state rep, mayor, state senator, Senate president, lieutenant governor, governor, and vice president. When Harding died, Coolidge quietly took the wheel like, "All right, let's keep this country calm." His brand was do less, panic never. Franklin D. Roosevelt, born rich and well-connected, started as a law apprentice, then lawyer, then New York State Senator. Wilson made him Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and later he became Governor of New York. He won the presidency in 1932 and somehow stayed there for 4 terms until his death mid-4th term. Man unlocked the endless presidency cheat code, and the Constitution had to patch it afterward. Harry Truman worked everywhere, a newspaper mailroom, a bank, a construction company, and then returned to the family farm. He served in the National Guard, owned a mining business, partnered in oil, fought in World War I, ran a clothing company that failed, became judge and then presiding judge, and finally U.S. Senator. FDR picked him as VP, and when FDR died, Truman got dropped into the final boss fight of World War II. Congrats, you're president. By the way, the world is on fire. Dwight D. Eisenhower spent his life building the most cracked military resume imaginable. Aide to Pershing and MacArthur, commander in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and Europe, D-Day boss, Army Chief of Staff, war memorist, and president of Columbia University. He returned to command NATO forces before finally becoming president. A resume so stacked it looks like someone typed max stats into the console. John F. Kennedy earned fame as a heroic naval officer in World War II, then served 3 terms in the House and 1 in the Senate before becoming the youngest elected president ever. Movie star charisma included. He basically walked into the Oval Office like a leading man in a political drama. Lyndon B. Johnson worked odd jobs, manual labor, law firm assistant, teacher, before becoming a congressional aide. He ran the National Youth Administration, won a House seat in 1937, served in World War II, became senator, Senate leader, and then vice president under JFK. After the assassination, LBJ went from Texas teacher to I'm signing half the major bills in modern history. Richard Nixon helped at the family store, became a lawyer, ran a citrus company, acted in local theater, and worked for the Office of Price Administration before joining the Navy in World War II. After the war, he entered Congress, joined the anti-communist crusade, became senator, became Eisenhower's VP, and then, eventually, President number 37. His career is just dramatic rise, dramatic fall. Repeat! Gerald Ford started working young, turned down NFL contracts, and instead coached football and boxing at Yale while in law school. He opened a law practice, served in the Navy in World War II, and then served 12 terms in the House as minority leader. After Agnew resigned, Ford became VP, and after Nixon resigned, he became the only president never elected to national office. Man was America's emergency backup quarterback. Jimmy Carter served as a submariner, ran the family peanut farm, joined community boards, became a deacon, and dove into early civil rights efforts. He served in the Georgia Senate, became governor, and built a reputation as an honest outsider, eventually winning the presidency. Then he spent the rest of his life doing side quests in humanitarian mode. Ronald Reagan started as a lifeguard, saving 77 people, allegedly, became a sportscaster, then Hollywood actor, then joined the Army Air Corps Film Unit in World War II. He worked for General Electric, led the Screen Actors Guild, helped blacklist suspected communists, and then served 2 terms as governor of California. America looked at this acting-politics hybrid and said,
Yeah, give him the presidency.
It was basically the beta test for what if celebrities ran the country. George H.W. Bush enlisted at 18 to fly Navy planes in World War II, attended Yale, worked in oil, co-founded a drilling company, and became party chairman. From there, he was congressman, UN ambassador, RNC chair, envoy to China, CIA director, and Reagan's VP, before finally stepping up as president in 1988. Bill Clinton worked college jobs, got his law degree from Yale, taught at the University of Arkansas, became Attorney General, then Governor of Arkansas. His leadership roles in national associations set him up to run for and win the presidency in 1992, from small-town band kid with a sax to leader of the free world. George W. Bush served as a pilot in the Texas Air National Guard, got an MBA, worked in oil, founded his own energy company, and then bought the Texas Rangers baseball team with some investors. He ran for governor of Texas twice and won both times before stepping into the White House. Very rich guy side quest until dad's old job opens up energy. Barack Obama started as a researcher in New York before becoming a community organizer in Chicago. He interned at a law firm during law school, ran voter registration drives, became a civil rights attorney, wrote a best-selling memoir, taught constitutional law, served in the Illinois State Senate, and then the U.S. Senate before winning the presidency. His rise is such a clean character arc, Hollywood didn't even need to rewrite it. Donald Trump worked in his father's real estate empire and used family money to expand into flashy hotels, casinos, and branding deals. He showed up in movies and TV, ran beauty pageants, and became a reality TV figure through The Apprentice. Despite lawsuits, bankruptcies, and drama, he rode name recognition all the way to the presidency. It's the "what if a tabloid headline became president" timeline. Joe Biden worked as a lifeguard, earned a law degree, became a lawyer and then public defender, and was elected to the Newcastle County Council. At just 29, he won a U.S. Senate seat, which he held for decades before serving as Obama's vice president and eventually becoming president himself. Longest slow-burn character progression in presidential history. And that is what America's presidents were doing before they had the nuclear codes. From feral frontier kids to failed farmers, B-movie cowboys, Tailor apprentices, Nepo babies, and at least 12 too many lawyers. These guys came from everywhere. Turns out, qualifications to run a superpower is a very flexible concept. If you enjoy this presidential career speedrun, smash that like button like Jackson smashed duels. Drop a comment telling me which president had the wildest pre-Oval Office resume. And subscribe so you never miss another episode of Wow, American history is way weirder than the textbooks promised. Until the next, this has been the History Goat, signing off before someone puts you on the 2048 presidential ballot.